Welcome to this episode of Apis TechTips, a series of short explainer excerpts from real Apis training courses. This episode teaches you the relevant words when talking about quality of service in 5G, and it comes from the course 5G NG RAN in an hour. Enjoy!
So, a user equipment which is connected to some data network, again, like the internet or IMS or some intranet, has a so-called PDU session to that data network. And the PDU session starts in the user equipment and goes via the radio network into the core network, where again we have a so-called user plane function. This PDU session will carry uplink protocol data units and downlink protocol data units. That's the purpose of the PDU session. And in order to do so, we have a so-called N3 tunnel from the radio access network to the core network, because this interface happens to be called the N3 interface. In the radio network, which is the focus in this short course, we have so-called data radio bearers, which will carry the user plane protocol data units from the user equipment to the radio access network, like the gNodeB, and vice versa. In this example, there are two data radio bearers because I decided so. In reality, there can be one data radio bearer for a session, there can be two, there can be three, there can be four, there can be, in principle, any number of data radio bearers in a session. And then in 5G, we have the concept of QoS Flows. So all traffic in a PDU session will belong to a so-called QoS flow. In this example, we have three, but then again, this is just an example I made up. So in a real situation, there can be any number of QoS flows in a session. And the idea is that each QoS flow has some QoS profile, a certain bit rate, a certain latency, a certain packet loss tolerance. And this is how we can differentiate traffic to and from one user equipment. If this PDU session goes to the public internet, maybe one QoS flow is for web browsing, another QoS flow is for video streaming, and a third QoS flow is for online gaming, because these are services that have different QoS requirements. So again, when we talk about QoS parameters, we talk about things like bit rates. Sometimes there is a guaranteed flow bit rate, sometimes there is no guaranteed flow bit rate. There is a maximum flow bit rate. There is some type of priority, how important is a certain QoS flow compared to other QoS flows. In case there is a shortage of resources, for instance, we need to prioritize. And each QoS flow is also associated with a so-called 5QI value, 5G QoS identifier, which I will show you on the next slide. This value is a pointer or a reference to things like priority, delay, and error tolerance. And well, obviously, all nodes, including the user equipment, which are involved here in the session, will need to implement these QoS parameters on their respective interfaces. So in order to make sure that the DRBs, the data radio bearers, have the right QoS profile, for the QoS flows, well, that's the responsibility of the radio access network, like the gNodeB, for instance.
If you enjoyed this Apis Tech Tip, check out the full Apis course 5G NG RAN in an hour, where this video came from. This course provides a quick overview of the 5th generation mobile technology and its radio access network NG RAN in particular. To check this course out in more detail and all our other training, just visit us on www.apistraining.com.